Jack Murphy wiped sweat from his brow as he stood in the center of the massive chamber. 17 different alien species watched him from raised platforms that circled the room. Some had multiple eyes, others had none at all. Some breathed air, others used chemicals Jack couldn't even name. But they all shared one thing. They were judging humanity. The year was 2157. Humans had been part of the galactic community for 30 years, ever since the Arcturians had discovered Earth's early space signals and made first contact. In that time, humans had learned, adapted, and grown faster than any species the Council had ever seen. Maybe too fast, Jack thought. Captain Lisa Bennett stood rigid beside him in her blue uniform. As Earth's military advisor, she knew this meeting wasn't going well. The Council members had been speaking among themselves in their universal translator language for hours, occasionally glancing at the two humans as if they were dangerous animals that might bite. "The Council has reached its decision," announced the Celari representative, a tall being with silver skin that reflected the chamber's lights. "Humanity's petition to join the Galactic Council is denied." Jack stepped forward. "With respect, we've met all technical requirements. Our faster-than-light drives, our medical advances, our—" "The issue is not your technology," interrupted the Medusan delegate, its voice gurgling through a breathing apparatus. "It is your nature." Lisa frowned. "Our nature." The Celari nodded slowly. "In 30 years, you have developed technology that took other species centuries. You have shown remarkable adaptation, but you have also shown signs of your evolutionary violence. Your history is filled with war. Your entertainment glorifies conflict. Your sciences advance most quickly when driven by competition." "That's changing," Jack argued. "Earth hasn't had a major war in almost 50 years. 50 years is nothing," said the Arcturian representative, the very species that had first contacted Earth. "The Council has maintained peace across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy for over 4,000 years. We cannot risk that peace." The Celari raised its 6-fingered hand. "The Council has voted 17-0. Humanity is deemed too unpredictable, too potentially dangerous for full integration into galactic society." Jack felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean exactly?" "The Sol system and its existing colonies will be quarantined," said the Medusan. "All technological exchange will cease. Communication with Council species will be limited to emergency channels only." "You're banishing us?" Lisa asked, her voice steady but tight with anger. "We are protecting the galaxy," corrected the Celari. "You will remain in your current territories. You will not expand further. You will develop on your own path, in isolation." "For how long?" Jack asked. "Until humanity proves its nature has truly evolved. Perhaps in a few centuries, we will revisit this decision." Lisa stepped forward. "This is wrong. You're judging an entire species based on fear, not facts." The chamber grew quiet. Then the Arcturian spoke, its voice almost sad. "We were your supporters once. We believed humans could join us. But even we have seen the signs. Your adaptability makes you dangerous. Your creativity makes you unpredictable. Your ambition makes you uncontrollable. The decision is final," the Celari announced. "You have one standard galactic cycle to conclude all affairs within Council space. After that, any human vessel found beyond your designated boundaries will be considered hostile." Jack wanted to argue more, but he knew it was useless. The Council, in its collective wisdom or fear, had made up its mind. As they left the chamber, Lisa whispered, "What do we tell Earth?" Jack looked at her, his face grim but determined. "We tell them the truth. The galaxy has rejected us, so we'll have to make our own way forward." 3 days later, their ship approached the edge of the Sol system. Jack stared out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, 17 species had decided humanity's fate without truly understanding what humans could do when backed into a corner. "They think they've contained us," Lisa said, joining him at the viewport. "They've actually just challenged us." Jack nodded slowly. They don't realize it yet, but this isn't the end of humanity's story in the stars. It's just the beginning, Lisa agreed. The ship's engines hummed as they prepared for the final jump home, carrying news that would forever change humanity's path among the stars. 10 years passed since the Council's judgment. Earth and its few colonies had adapted to life in isolation, but they had not accepted it. Samantha Pierce looked through the large window of her office at the sprawling research complex below. As director of the Human Expansion Initiative, she had overseen humanity's greatest scientific push in history. The complex, hidden beneath the surface of Mars, housed 5,000 of Earth's brightest minds, all working toward one goal: breaking free of their cosmic prison. "Director, he's done it." Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Engineer Martinez wants to show you right away." Samantha hurried down to Lab 7, where Paul Martinez had been working for the past 3 years. The lab was filled with equipment salvaged or reverse engineered from the brief period of alien contact. Paul stood next to a machine humming with blue energy, his tired eyes now bright with excitement. "It works," he said simply. "We can travel faster than light without their navigation network." The Council's FTL system required ships to follow specific routes, controlled and monitored by Council technology. It was one of the ways they had planned to keep humans contained. "You're sure?" Samantha asked, her heart racing. Paul nodded. "The test probes reached Alpha Centauri and returned on their own. We've broken their leash." Samantha touched the machine with reverence. "How soon until we can scale it for a ship?" 6 months. Maybe less. On the other side of the complex, Colonel Eric Wells reviewed data from the latest defense system tests. After the banishment, he had been tasked with preparing humanity for the worst: Council enforcement of their quarantine. "Run the simulation again," he told his team. "The auxiliary shields adapted too quickly to our weapons." A young lieutenant brought up a new display. "Sir, what if we use the pulse pattern we discovered in their communication systems? Their shields might have the same base frequency." Eric considered this. "Do it. And check if we can apply the same principle to the Medusan technology." The team worked through the night. By morning, their simulation showed a 50% increase in effectiveness against the alien defenses. Eric called Samantha immediately. "Pierce, we've made progress. I think we can defend a small colony if necessary." "Good timing," she replied. "Martinez has the drive working. We're going to need your defenses sooner than expected." 3 months later, they met in the underground war room with Earth's highest officials, representatives from each human colony joined by secure transmission. The room was tense with anticipation. "We can do this," Samantha said, addressing the group. "We have the technology to establish colonies beyond our boundaries and the means to defend them. The Council will respond," warned the Secretary General. "Are we ready for that?" Eric stepped forward. "We're not looking for a war. We're simply refusing to be caged." "They gave us no choice," Paul added. "They judged us too quickly, feared us too easily, and abandoned us too willingly." The meeting lasted hours. Some argued for patience, for working within the Council's restrictions. Others pushed for immediate action. In the end, the vote was clear. Humanity would expand despite the Council's decree. The first independent colony ship began construction in Earth's orbit 1 week later. Named Defiance, it would carry 500 colonists to Proxima Centauri. Samantha watched the construction from her office window, now relocated to the orbital station. Next to her desk sat a small model of the Council chamber where humanity had been judged and banished. "They thought they were ending our story," she said to herself. "They didn't realize they were just giving us a reason to write our own." In labs across the solar system, humans worked day and night. Engineers refined the new drives. Military personnel trained on defense systems designed specifically to counter Council technology. Scientists developed new ways to detect Council ships at greater distances. The Council had expected humanity to remain safely contained, perhaps even to destroy itself in frustration. Instead, they had created something unexpected: A unified human race with a single purpose. Humanity wasn't just planning to survive, it was preparing to thrive. The colony ship Defiance gleamed in the darkness of space. Captain Alan Miller walked through the main corridor, nodding to crew members as he made his way to the bridge. After 3 years of planning and 6 months of travel, they had reached Proxima Centauri. "Status report," he said as he entered the bridge. "All systems normal, Captain," replied his first officer. "We're approaching the third moon of the gas giant. Initial scans show it's suitable for the colony base, just as our probes indicated." Alan looked at the main screen. The moon grew larger as they approached. It had water, breathable air, and enough resources to support the colony. More importantly, it was well outside the boundaries the Council had set for humanity. "Get Dr. White up here," he ordered. "I want her final assessment before we commit." Dr. Karen White was the mission's lead xenobiologist. She arrived minutes later, her tablet filled with data from the moon's surface. "It's perfect," she said, excitement clear in her voice. "Better than we hoped. The soil can support Earth crops with minimal modification. The local plant life isn't toxic to humans, and there's nothing that appears sentient or advanced enough to cause ethical concerns about our settlement." Alan nodded. "Then let's make history." 2 days later, the first human foot stepped onto the surface of the moon they named Hope. Within a week, the prefabricated colony buildings were in place. Within a month, the first crops were planted in experimental fields. Hope Colony was born. Back on Earth, Samantha Pierce received the news with relief. The colony's communication system, using the new quantum entanglement technology Paul Martinez had developed, allowed instant communication despite the distance. "They made it," she told the gathered officials, "and there's been no sign of Council interference." But that changed 3 months later. Alan was overseeing the construction of the colony's defense grid when the alarm sounded. "Captain, we have multiple ships entering the system," the sensor operator called over the comm. "Configuration matches Council vessels." "Battle stations," Alan ordered calmly. "Activate defense protocols. No aggressive moves, but make sure our shields are at full power." The Council ships, 5 in total, approached Hope Colony in a standard formation. Their weapons remained powered down, but their intent was clear. They were here to investigate the treaty violation. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. Alan straightened his uniform. On screen, a Silari commander appeared on the main display. "Human vessel and settlement, you are in violation of Council decree. This system is outside your permitted boundaries. You will dismantle your colony and return to Sol immediately." Alan kept his voice level. "We respectfully decline. This moon was unclaimed and unused. We have harmed no one by settling here." "That is not for you to decide," the Silari said. "The Council has spoken. If you do not comply, we will be forced to remove you." "I understand," Alan replied. "But before you take action, you should know that our defenses are specifically designed to counter Council technology. We've studied you as carefully as you once studied us." The Xilari paused, clearly surprised. "Your weapons cannot match our ships." "Perhaps, perhaps not. Are you willing to risk the lives of your crew to find out?" After a tense moment, the Xilari cut the transmission. The Council ships held position for several hours, scanning the colony and its defenses. Finally, they retreated to the edge of the system. 3 days later, they left completely. The news spread quickly across human space. The Council had backed down. The colonists celebrated their small victory, but Alan and Karen knew this was just the beginning. "They'll be back," Karen said as they watched the sunset on their new world. "With more ships next time." Alan nodded. "Yes, but by then, we won't be alone out here." He was right. Within 2 years, 3 more colony ships left Sol, heading for other promising systems. The Human Alliance of Independent Worlds was formally established, linking Earth and all human colonies together in common purpose. Humanity had taken its first steps beyond its prison, and there would be no turning back. 20 years had passed since the first human colony ship broke free from the Council's boundaries. The Human Alliance now included 12 thriving colonies across 9 star systems. Ships moved regularly between them, carrying people and resources through the darkness of space, using the human-designed FTL drives that didn't rely on Council technology. Commander Frank Harris stood on the bridge of the scout ship Pathfinder. His mission was to explore the edges of Council space, looking for resources and potential colony sites. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," said his sensor officer. "There's a planet ahead that doesn't match our records." Frank moved to look at the sensor display. "What do you mean?" "According to Council star charts we obtained, this planet should be barren, but I'm detecting ruins on the surface. Large ones." Frank made his decision quickly. "Take us in closer, but keep our shields up and stay alert for Council patrols." The Pathfinder approached the mystery planet carefully. It orbited a yellow star at the very edge of Council territory, far from any major trade routes or populated systems. "Scan complete," the sensor officer announced. "The ruins cover almost half a continent, and they're old, sir, really old." "Any signs of current occupation?" "No, sir. The civilization that built this has been gone for thousands of years." Frank ordered a small team to the surface. He led them himself, landing their shuttle near what appeared to be a massive structure that might have once been a temple or government building. "The architecture doesn't match any known Council species," said the team's synorchaeologist as they explored the ruins. "This is something entirely different." In what seemed to be a data storage room, they found something unexpected: records that were still partly intact. The team worked carefully to recover what information they could, transferring it to their own systems. Hours later, back on the Pathfinder, Intelligence Officer Mary Johnson examined the translated data. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, her voice tight with tension. "These records mention the Council, but from thousands of years ago." Frank leaned over her console. "What do they say?" "According to this, the species that lived here was advancing quickly. They had developed faster-than-light communication before even discovering space travel. The Council considered them a potential destabilizing influence and too unpredictable to safely integrate." Frank felt a chill run down his spine. "That sounds familiar." Mary nodded grimly. "It gets worse. The Council didn't just quarantine them. The records suggest deliberate interference to disrupt their technological progress. Eventually, the civilization collapsed due to resource shortages that could have been solved with space technology." "Are you saying the Council?" Frank couldn't finish the sentence. "They didn't directly destroy them, but they made sure they couldn't thrive," Mary said. "And sir, this isn't the only case. These records mention at least 6 other species that faced similar treatment." Frank stared at the alien text scrolling across the screen. "We need to get this information back to Alliance headquarters." During the journey home, Mary connected the discovered records with historical data they had from their brief time with the Council. She found patterns, promising species that had suddenly vanished from galactic records, species that had been mentioned in early contacts but never appeared in later Council documents. "Our banishment wasn't unique," she told Frank as they prepared their report. "It's their standard procedure for any species they can't control. They isolate what they fear." When they reached Alliance space, their findings caused immediate concern among leadership. The Human Alliance had believed they were simply an unwelcome newcomer. Now they understood they were one of many species the Council had tried to contain or suppress. "This changes everything," said Director Pierce, now older but still leading humanity's expansion efforts. "We're not just fighting for our right to exist in space. We might be fighting for the rights of others as well." The Pathfinder's discovery marked a turning point. Humanity would no longer just expand for its own sake. It would seek out others who had faced the Council's judgment and see if allies could be found among the shadows. The Human Alliance ship Discovery drifted silently in the shadow of a gas giant. For 3 weeks, they had been following faint signals that didn't match any known Council communication patterns. Diplomat Joseph Clark paced the bridge, waiting for news. Contact, the communications officer finally announced. We're receiving a direct transmission. It's using our own encryption method, but with modifications. On screen, Joseph ordered. The view screen flickered to life. A reptilian face appeared, with scales that shimmered between green and gold. Its vertical pupils narrowed as it studied the humans. So it is true, the alien said in slightly accented English. The Council's latest victims have escaped their cage. Joseph stepped forward. I am Joseph Clark, representing the Human Alliance of Independent Worlds. Who am I addressing? I am Severax, speaker for the Viridian Remnant. The reptilian's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. We have been watching your expansion with great interest. You move quickly for a young species. The Viridians, Joseph said, recognizing the name from the ancient records found on the ruined world. Your people were banished by the Council centuries ago. Severax nodded. 642 of your years. We were deemed too aggressive in resource acquisition and unwilling to comply with Council authority. Yet you survived. We did more than survive. We adapted. We hid. We built. Severax leaned closer to the screen. And now we wish to meet with you, face to face. 2 days later, Joseph found himself aboard a Viridian vessel, escorted to a hidden base in an asteroid field. The station was massive, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid nearly 30 kilometers wide. Technology unlike anything humans had seen hummed throughout the structure. We have established contact with 3 other banished species, Severax explained as they walked through the station. But none have expanded as rapidly as humans. None have directly confronted Council ships and won. We didn't exactly win, Joseph admitted. They chose not to fight. Which is victory when facing the Council, Severax said. They prefer not to fight battles they might lose. It damages their image of superiority. In a large meeting chamber, Joseph presented the Human Alliance's proposal, a formal alliance between their peoples. The Sovereignty Pact would unite banished species against Council interference. Your technology and ours complement each other, Joseph explained. Your stealth systems and our weapons, your food production methods and our medical advances. The Viridians agreed. Within months, human and Viridian ships began joint operations. Meanwhile, Alliance operative Sophia Ramirez had infiltrated Council space, traveling between worlds using a combination of forged documents and Viridian stealth technology. Her mission was to find other oppressed species who might join their cause. On a mining world near the galactic core, she made contact with the Ketra, an insectoid species forced to extract rare minerals for Council worlds. Their wings had been genetically modified by Council scientists to prevent flight, keeping them bound to the mines. We have not forgotten what we once were, the Ketra leader told her in a secret meeting deep in the mines. Our elders passed down stories of when we built great hives among the clouds. On another world, Sophia found the aquatic merle, whose waters were being systematically drained to supply Council agricultural projects. They take our world drop by drop, a merle elder said, his translucent skin revealing flashing lights of distress beneath. Soon, there will be nothing left. Sophia promised both species that help would come. The pact would grow. Back at Alliance headquarters, reports from these missions were causing excitement and concern. The Council's grip on the galaxy was far more extensive than anyone had realized. Dozens of species lived under various forms of control or exploitation. We started this to secure our own future, Joseph said during a strategy meeting. But it's becoming something much larger. Director Pierce, her hair now gray with age, nodded. Sometimes the greatest empires begin not with dreams of power, but with the simple desire for freedom. The Sovereignty Pact grew steadily over the next year. 7 formerly banished species and representatives from 5 oppressed worlds gathered at a secret location to plan their next moves. The Council, still unaware of the full extent of the alliance forming against them, continued their policy of containment and control. Their complacency would soon be their undoing. The first attack came without warning. 3 human colonies on the edge of Alliance space detected unusual energy readings just before automated drone ships appeared. The drones, sleek and deadly, struck at defense installations and communication arrays with ruthless precision. Admiral William Thompson received the distress calls aboard the Alliance flagship Dauntless. His weathered face showed no emotion as he processed the reports, but his eyes hardened. "The Council has finally decided to act," he told his officers. "They're not using their main fleet. These are automated enforcement drones. No Council lives at risk, no public knowledge of the action." "Why now?" asked his second-in-command. "They've realized the Sovereignty Pact exists," William said simply. "We've become too big to ignore." The Alliance fleet mobilized quickly, but the drone attacks continued. Unlike traditional warfare, there were no declarations, no demands, no communication at all, just the silent, efficient culling of what the Council deemed a growing problem. William studied the attack patterns and realized the Council was using standard tactics they had employed for millennia. Their technological advantage had always ensured victory, but humans had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. "We can't match them in direct battle," he told the Alliance leadership through a secure transmission. "But we don't need to." The Alliance implemented Operation Shadow Dance. Small, fast ships would lure Council drones into prepared ambush points. Other vessels would perform quick strikes at drone repair facilities that the Viridians had identified. The human fleet never gathered in one place, never presented a clear target. "Fight like humans," William told his captains. "Be unpredictable. Be creative. Be the very thing the Council fears." Meanwhile, engineer Nicole Adams worked day and night in a hidden laboratory on Europa. She had been studying recovered drone parts from the battles, looking for weaknesses in their systems. "The drones communicate with each other using quantum entanglement," she explained to her team. "But the entanglement has to be continually reinforced through control signals from Council space." Nicole developed a virus that could spread through these control signals, disrupting the coordination between drones. When released into a captured drone and allowed to reconnect to the command network, the virus spread rapidly. Across dozens of systems, Council drones suddenly began to malfunction. Some became erratic, others simply shut down. Without coordination, their overwhelming technological advantage was neutralized. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Council faced an enemy they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior technology. The First Shadow War, as it came to be known, was fought in distant systems, away from the public knowledge of most Council citizens. But rumors began to spread. Resources were being diverted. Military vessels were departing without explanation. Merchant ships reported unusual restrictions in certain sectors. Questions arose in Council meetings that the leadership struggled to answer. On the Council world of Axelon, scientist Ziv Aaron noticed that her research funding was suddenly redirected to military applications. When she investigated, she found references to human containment protocols and drone fleet reinforcement. "What is happening with the humans?" she asked her superior. "Nothing that concerns you," was the sharp reply. "The Council handles these matters as it always has." But the tone made Ziv Aaron curious. She began quietly researching the history of Council dealings with emerging species. What she found troubled her deeply. The pattern was clear. Throughout Council history, promising species were either controlled through careful guidance or isolated if they showed too much independence. Sometimes, as with the humans, they were openly banished. Other times, their development was subtly hindered through technological sabotage or resource limitation. Ziv Aaron wasn't alone in her doubts. Across Council worlds, citizens began questioning the wisdom of their ancient leadership structure. The resources being poured into the hidden war were affecting everyday life. And for what purpose? To contain a species most Council citizens had never even seen. As the Shadow War continued, neither side could claim clear victory. But while the Council sought merely to contain, the Alliance and the Sovereignty Pact fought for their very right to exist, and they were growing stronger with each passing day. By the year 2230, the balance of power had shifted. What began as a human struggle for freedom had evolved into something much larger. The Sovereignty Pact now included 7 formerly banished species and had secret allies on numerous council worlds. Grand Admiral Susan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Liberty, watching as the combined Pact fleet assembled for Operation Daybreak. At 62, she had spent most of her adult life preparing for this moment. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. Susan nodded. "The Viridians?" "In position. Their stealth fleet has reached all targets. And our inside contact." Dr. Zivera confirms she's ready. "The data package is prepared." Susan took a deep breath. "Then let's bring daylight to the shadows. Begin Operation Daybreak." Across Council space, on 17 major worlds, something unprecedented happened simultaneously. Every communication system, from personal devices to massive public networks, began broadcasting the same message: the truth about the Council's history of suppression and control. On the Council homeworld of Silara, Dr. Zivera worked quickly with human information specialist Peter Johnson. For 3 years, they had carefully gathered proof of the Council's systematic suppression of developing species. Now they released it all at once through a backdoor in the central communication hub. "It's working," Peter said as he monitored the data flow. "The information is spreading faster than they can block it." Zivera nodded, her silver skin reflecting the screens around them. "The people deserve to know what has been done in their name for thousands of years." The revelation stunned the galactic community. Records of species that had been quietly eliminated when they developed in ways the Council disapproved of. Evidence of deliberate technological sabotage against promising civilizations. Proof that resources from dozens of worlds were being extracted to support the Council elite, while native species suffered. And most shocking of all, the now public knowledge of the Shadow War being fought against the human-led Pact, a war that had never been acknowledged to the general population. Revolution erupted on multiple Council worlds. On Medusan Prime, citizens surrounded the Council headquarters, demanding answers. On Arcturus, the entire regional government resigned in protest. On the mining world of Ketra, the workers destroyed their genetic modification centers and reclaimed their ability to fly. The rigid Council hierarchy began to crumble from within. Some Council representatives tried to maintain control through military force. Others admitted the truth and stepped down. As the Council's grip weakened, the Sovereignty Pact fleet moved to secure critical systems. Their goal was not conquest but liberation. Worlds that had been forced to provide resources to the Council were freed from their obligations. Species that had been kept artificially dependent were given technology to sustain themselves. Susan watched from the bridge as reports came in from across Council space. "The Axillari Central Council has surrendered," her communications officer reported. "The Arcturians are requesting to join the Pact. The Medusans have overthrown their Council representatives and declared independence." "And the drone fleets?" Susan asked. "Deactivated. With the central control systems exposed, they're shutting them down themselves. No one wants to be associated with that program now." Peter and Zivera escaped the Council homeworld aboard a Viridian stealth ship. They'd brought with them the final piece of evidence, the original decision documents that had condemned humanity to banishment 75 years earlier. "It's ironic," Peter said as they watched the Council tower recede behind them. "They feared us because we were unpredictable, because we might disrupt their perfect, controlled society. And in trying to prevent that, they caused exactly what they feared," Zivera replied. The revolution spread quickly. Without their information control and automated enforcement systems, the Council found itself unable to maintain power. Centuries of suppressed resentment fueled the changes sweeping across the galaxy. What had begun as humanity's fight for the right to expand beyond artificial boundaries had become a galactic revolution. The Council's judgment of humanity as too unpredictable had proven prophetic in a way they never imagined. And as the old order collapsed, a new question emerged. What would take its place? 75 years after humanity's banishment, representatives from all known sentient species gathered at a massive space station called Convergence. Built through combined human and Viridian engineering, it floated at a neutral point between what had once been Council space and Alliance territory. Andrew Lewis walked slowly through the Grand Assembly Hall. At 82 years old, he moved with less speed than in his youth, but his mind remained sharp. As a child, he had witnessed Earth receive the news of banishment. Now, as the human diplomat chosen to represent his species, he would help shape what came next. The hall filled with beings of all forms, species that walked, crawled, floated, or shifted, species from water worlds and desert planets. Former council members sat alongside those they had once judged unworthy of galactic society. "It is time," announced the Viridian speaker, Severax, now elderly with dulled scales. "Let the final assembly begin." The former council leaders were brought before the gathering, not as prisoners, but as representatives of a failed system that had lasted for millennia. They would face justice, but with mercy, the kind they had rarely shown others. An Arcturian elder spoke first. For 4,000 years, the council maintained what we called peace, but it was not true peace. It was control. It was fear. It was the suppression of any who might challenge our vision of what the galaxy should be. A Medusan representative continued. "We believed we were protecting civilization. Instead, we were stifling it. We were so afraid of chaos that we prevented growth. We were so concerned with stability that we committed great wrongs in its name." The proceedings continued for days. Each species shared their experience under council rule. The Ketera spoke of their wings being clipped. The Merrill described their oceans being drained. Humans told of their banishment for being too unpredictable. Then, slowly, a new structure began to take shape. Not a council that would rule from above, but a confederation that would build from below. Each species would govern itself, with representatives gathering to address matters that affected all. "We proposed the Galactic Confederation," Andrew said, presenting the framework that representatives from 12 species had developed together. Not ruled by the oldest or most technologically advanced, but guided by principles all can embrace. Self-determination, mutual aid, knowledge sharing, cooperative advancement. The debate was vigorous but respectful. Species that had been enemies now found common ground. Former council members offered insights on what had worked in the old system alongside acknowledgement of its failures. After a week of discussion, the vote was unanimous. The Galactic Confederation was born. Andrew Lewis, who had seen humanity's journey from outcasts to architects of a new galactic order, was elected as the first coordinator of the Confederation Assembly. His role would not be to rule, but to facilitate, to ensure all voices were heard. As the ceremony concluded, Andrew stood at the great viewing window of Convergence Station. Stars stretched before him, each potentially holding worlds with species yet to be discovered, species that would now be welcomed rather than judged. Susan Mitchell joined him there. Her admiral's uniform was now adorned with the new Confederation insignia, a spiral galaxy with stars of equal brightness. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you were a boy?" she asked him. "When we first learned we were banished." Andrew shook his head. "Never. We only wanted freedom to find our own path among the stars. And instead, we changed the path for everyone." Below them in the main hall, humans mingled with dozens of other species. Engineers exchanged ideas for new technologies. Scientists compared notes on medical advances. Cultural representatives arranged exchange programs between worlds. "They feared us for being unpredictable," Andrew said with